Aitah arranged a surprise meal for a friend. His baby mama and mother got pissed off. I organized a surprise 30th birthday dinner for my friend. He has family challenges concerning his youngest brother, which his mother refuses to acknowledge, and he tries to limit his time with him. Unfortunately, he is also their mother's driver, a detail that will become important later. I apologize for the lengthy explanation. While visiting my friend's pub one day, he shared that one of his barmaids, a friend of his, wished to throw him a surprise birthday party but did not know any of his other friends and did not want people to assume she was his girlfriend. That's a story for another time. He had mentioned this to his child's mother, and she suggested that he have the barmaid contact her, but the barmaid lacked her contact information, and the mother is quite unapproachable. I did not say much at that moment except to ask questions like, would he want a surprise party? And since it is a significant birthday, would he like his mother there if it also meant his youngest brother would attend? He agreed to the surprise, but declined the idea of having his mother and younger brother present. At that juncture, all I could think was that I could act as a mediator between the two parties to facilitate the exchange of contact information, as I was friendly with both, or so I believed. I reached out to the child's mother to serve as a liaison and to inquire if she had begun making any arrangements, or if she had ideas for a celebration that included my friend's mother, but excluded the younger brother, due to the issues previously mentioned. She outright ignored my message, instead choosing to inform his youngest brother that I was organizing a surprise party, leading him to message me for details about the plans. At that time, there were no plans to discuss. I relayed the message to my friend, and he told me to disregard it since he did not want his brother involved. Fast forward a few days, and his mother reached out to him, asking what issues he had with his brother because the child's mother had informed them that he did not want his brother at his birthday due to their strained relationship. He told me he had resolved the matter, and I assumed he meant that he had smoothed over tensions and planned to see them on his birthday, another point I will revisit later. I attempted to contact the child's mother again through various platforms and by phone, but once more, she ignored me. Knowing my friend would appreciate some form of celebration, as he had not had a significant birthday celebration since turning 18, I chose to speak to the barmaid. She explained that she was unable to organize anything due to her busy schedule with college and work, and again, she did not want to be perceived as his girlfriend. Consequently, I decided to arrange something on my own. I also would not be attending since I was meant to have my children that weekend, and it did not seem right to bring them along to an adult-only dinner, for everyone's sake. We had planned to visit him earlier that day anyway. The reason I was willing to organize but not attend was that no one ever celebrated my birthdays, and I did not want anyone to experience that. I would do anything for my friends and loved ones. Since no suggestions had been forthcoming, and to avoid family drama, I opted to plan a surprise dinner limited to friends. The theme would be to dress similarly to my friend and bring his favorite beverage. One of the friends then inquired if they could bring their children, a preteen and a young teen, as they adored their uncle and wished to celebrate with him. I had no objections, the more, the merrier. Given that it had become more of a family gathering, I figured we could invite his 10-year-old daughter and adjust the timing. However, the child's mother was still not responding to me. I messaged everyone I knew who had her contact details, but they either did not have her information or failed to reply. I spoke with his best friend in person, but he also had no suggestions since she did not communicate with him either. I updated the guest list to include the kids, along with the child's mother and daughter, just in case. At that point, I had intended to bring my kids too, but their father later requested to switch weekends, and I adjusted the numbers accordingly. Then, about 4 days before the big day, my friend mentioned that he would really like to see his other brother, although he did not think he would be available, as he typically kept very busy. I reached out to see if he might be free, and if so, if he would like to join us for the dinner, considering he would likely avoid the house if his youngest brother was there, given he also has issues with him. I received confirmation and adjusted the guest list again. At this stage, I felt it was turning into more than just a gathering of friends, and I thought we should include his mother, but my friend was adamant about not wanting his youngest brother there. Once more, I sought advice on how to manage including the mother without her youngest son, but this time I asked the other brother for input. No useful suggestions emerged. 3 days before the event, I happened to encounter the child's mother at the grocery store and asked her face to face about the plans. She insisted they could not attend because she wouldn't be able to get there. I offered her a ride, but she dismissed it and became quite snappy, claiming I had not thought things through and that not everyone could afford to dine out. I apologized and offered to pay half. I was already covering the birthday boy's meal. Still, she turned down my offer. I expressed my disappointment, stating that my friend would have loved the opportunity to see his daughter, and at the very least, I could provide a lift so they could see him that day. She declined once more. Fast forward to the night before the big event. I arrived at my friend's pub. I was staying over to prepare the decorations as a surprise, and was immediately greeted by other friends before I could even say hello to my friend behind the bar. It did not matter much since he was occupied serving other customers, and I did not want to interrupt him. When the moment was right, I stepped away from my friends to greet the birthday boy, and was taken aback to realize it was his mother and youngest brother there, receiving them with a warm greeting. I had always gotten along well with them, but they did not even acknowledge me and barely muttered a hello. I presumed perhaps they were having an off day and asked about their well-being, and they simply replied with meh, then asked, "Is friend having a surprise party tomorrow?" right in front of him. Naturally, I could not confirm anything in his presence and said, "I believe there will be a gathering in the evening," which was true, as all his regulars wanted to buy him a drink for his birthday. I refrained from saying anything further because, as far as I was aware, he did not want his brother attending the primary celebration, but he had seemingly resolved matters with them previously. However, when he inquired what time he would see them the following day, which I thought indicated he had already made plans with them, as earlier mentioned, they responded that they were not bothering since they were coming tonight to deliver his gifts instead. 2 pint glasses imprinted with the number 30. Living at a pub, he has an abundance of pint glasses. I could see he was visibly surprised and hurt, and once they left, we stepped outside. He asked again about the surprise party, as one of the other barmaids had gotten intoxicated and spilled the beans about it. I asked if there were indeed going to be surprises, would he want his mother present even if it included his youngest brother, and he said yes. Grateful that I had not yet canceled the 2 seats for the child's mother and daughter, I quickly tried to message the brother, but he had blocked me. I was at a loss about what to do since I lacked any other means of reaching out. Later that evening, while chatting with other friends, I was scrolling through Facebook Messenger to locate an old message and stumbled upon a birthday message I had sent to his mother the previous year. I immediately sent her a message to clarify that I had not realized they had no other plans, but we had a friend dinner arranged, as I could not disclose that it was due to conflicts between him and his brother, reasoning that the other brother could manage similar feelings like my friend, and received no reply until 5:30 p.m. the next day, half an hour after the dinner had begun, informing me they would not be attending, and that I was a terrible person for preventing her from seeing her son on his birthday, despite her declination to visit the day before. She complained about being unaware of the situation, although she mentioned the child's mother had informed her. I felt guilty, but also believed I had done everything possible to find a way to include her without the brother, and then include the brother later. After all my hard work to create a special day for him, coupled with the stress and anxiety of the prior day, her message made me see red, but that part is for later. Nevertheless, on the day of the event, the child's mother and daughter arrived at the pub to celebrate Daddy's big day. Her new partner drove them, and it was fantastic. He was over the moon. We played Uno, though the child's mother refused to join but continually interrupted the game for Snapchat pictures with her daughter and friend, shooting me disapproving glances, ignoring me when I addressed her, or snapping at me. I felt confused but chose not to let it bother me as it was all about the birthday boy. They eventually left, and the barmaid and I encouraged the birthday boy to prepare for the evening so we could set up the decorations. After finishing, I went upstairs to change and tried to persuade him to wear a specific jacket, but without being able to explain why, he declined, and we left the discussion there. He came downstairs and was pleased with the decorations, excited to embark on his mystery drive. Upon arriving at the destination, his favorite pub restaurant, he was greeted by guests dressed like him and carrying his favorite beverage, and then it became clear why I had suggested the jacket. He was utterly surprised, thrilled to see everyone and their outfits. However, much to my surprise, the child's mother and daughter showed up as well, having come with his best friend. My reaction was mixed. I was happy to see his daughter, concerned that we might lack enough seating since we had already added his mother and brother to the list, making our group larger and possibly complicating accommodation at the restaurant last minute, and frustrated because she had failed to mention her attendance when I had seen her earlier that day, which could have led to me canceling the extra seats. I warmly greeted them, and we waited outside for his brother to arrive, having received a message that they were running 15 minutes late, then another one notifying us they had just left, with a 20-minute drive ahead. When we entered, we were informed that we had another reservation coming in 2 hours later. No issue, I hoped. It turned out to be a problem. We left late since our food for everyone was delayed due to the late arrivals. His brother then arrived, 30 minutes late, accompanied by their baby, who they had claimed was being cared for by the girlfriend's mother, necessitating a high chair to be added to our table. At that moment, I was relieved that his mother had opted out, as there wouldn't have been enough space for more seats. I mentioned wanting to speak with the child's mother briefly when she stepped outside for a cigarette, and she appeared surprised and somewhat fearful. She attempted to slip away when I went to gather cutlery and condiments for the tables, but I caught her eye and followed her out. I expressed that while I was glad they had come and made my friend's day brighter, I wanted to know why she had not informed me of her plans, and why she had ignored my messages, since I could have adjusted the numbers accordingly. She fibbed, claiming she had been too unwell to respond to any messages. I called out her dishonesty, noting her ailment had not stopped her from messaging the youngest brother, her mother, the birthday boy, or his best friend. I explained that I was now facing backlash from his mother because she chose to interact with them rather than collaborate with me to find a solution to include everyone. She then resorted to a fake crying act, asking, "Why is it always my fault?" before fleeing. She spent the entire meal sulking, refusing to eat anything. When I returned inside looking for something for the barmaid friend, the barmaid mentioned that the child's mother was spreading rumors that I had berated her unfairly, and it was making me appear unfavorable. The child's mother then insisted on not returning to the pub for cake, so the best friend offered to take her home. As a final complication, the barmaid was called in to work that evening because the scheduled bartender did not show up, which will also be relevant later. We returned to celebrate the birthday cake, for which I was responsible, and the friends with kids had to leave. The best friend then took the birthday boy outside under the pretense of offering him help with his car. He is a mechanic and hardly needs assistance, and afterward, the birthday boy avoided me for the remainder of the evening. At the end of the night, around 2 a.m., the barmaid erupted into tears because she missed out on the party while working, and my friend expressed his gratitude for the party, the meal, and everything she had done to make the evening special for him. That stung, as I had put in all the effort. I communicated with everyone, arranged the restaurant, bought the decorations and a customizable badge, made the cake, developed a theme, etc., along with dealing with all the negativity. All she contributed was to hang some decorations with me and cover a shift. I remained upset when I woke up the following morning and chose to leave early to head home. Shortly thereafter, I began receiving a barrage of messages from his mother again, accusing me of being a terrible person for not including her, which I felt guilty about, even though I assumed the birthday boy had already made plans to see her. She scolded me for confronting the precious child's mother, threatening to prevent him from seeing his daughter in the future. She also claimed it was my responsibility to ensure she saw him since she was mourning the loss of her mother-in-law, who had passed away a few months prior, and had thus been unable to plan anything. I repeatedly apologized and reiterated that I believed they already had plans. It was intended to be a gathering of friends, which eventually expanded. As soon as I realized they had no plans, I made efforts to include them, but the child's mother needed to mature and address her issues with me directly rather than prevent her child from seeing his father. A deeply unfair move, in my opinion. I reminded her that it was her responsibility to arrange time with her son on his birthday, emphasizing that she had known for a year that it was an important birthday and had ample time to plan something. I then pointed out that if I could organize an event in just 2.5 weeks while managing 2 small children and arranging visits to my terminally ill grandparents 2.5 hours away, she could definitely manage something in a year. This conversation spiraled in circles. I told my friend everything that occurred, and he assured me he would handle the situation. He apologized for not expressing gratitude for the party since he had not realized my involvement. To be honest, I did not think I had concealed my role that well, but apparently I had done better than I thought. He then did not speak to me for an entire month, explaining that he was upset with me. I know I probably should have taken the high road and refrained from speaking to the child's mother, at least not at the beginning of the meal, but am I the one at fault here? Story 2. How do I, 32M, navigate the repeated ghosting and withdrawal patterns with my fearful avoidant LDR partner, 37F, after 6 months of increasingly serious relationship planning? So, to provide some background, she comes from a different country, located 1,400 kilometers away, and she was working in my town for a few weeks when we first met last September. We connected immediately. We arranged a date for that same day at my residence. The chemistry was extraordinary, and we spent one of the most unforgettable nights together. It was her last night in town, and with a heavy heart, I bid her farewell. We maintained daily communication through text messages and video calls, and soon made plans for me to visit her hometown. At that time, I knew nothing about attachment styles. Everything appeared perfectly fine on the surface. She seemed happy to see me. We were in constant contact, and our conversations were flirty as we shared a lot about our lives with each other in an effort to understand one another better prior to my visit. Shortly before my planned visit, she stopped communicating with me for 5 days. Frustrated, I reached out after that time and told her that I would cancel my flights if she didn't respond by the evening. She re-engaged with an extensive and emotional message, and we had a long and detailed discussion about why this relationship could not work out. Her reasons resonated with me even without prior knowledge of attachment theory. Her father had passed away when she was young, and she had 2 traumatic breakups in the past marked by significant betrayal. She wished to focus on her career and believed that a relationship could not flourish if we could not live together. Additionally, she was very cautious due to her previous breakups and her traumatic panic responses afterward. She wanted to spare us both the pain by following her logical thinking rather than her emotions. While I felt saddened, I also understood her rationale. We parted on amicable terms, and I did not harbor any negative feelings, just sorrow regarding the practical and geographical realities that had led to this situation. A few weeks later, I felt compelled to message her again because I enjoyed our connection and our deep conversations. I found it fascinating to learn more about her. She replied positively and was happy to hear from me, leading to extended discussions until the beginning of November. She then asked if I would like to see her again, as she had the chance to work in my town once more. I was excited, and we began to build anticipation for her visit. It's worth mentioning that by November, there had been a shift in our dynamic. She transitioned from pursuing me to me pursuing her. I was starting to handle most of our conversations and the emotional aspects of our relationship. As the meeting date approached, she began to distance herself once again. However, she still expressed a desire to see me not just for one day, but across several days. On the Thursday before her work was to start the following Monday, she ghosted me until Tuesday when she was already working in town. After 5 days, she reacted to an old message of mine with a heart, and I reached out humorously, expressing that I was glad she was still alive, and we gradually resumed talking. However, I found myself carrying the entire connection. At that point, I accepted this, understanding that her job was demanding, and I knew she had personal struggles regarding it. I sought to be supportive, and we still managed to have a brief call. During that call, she mentioned having some gifts for me and asked if I wanted to meet her. Naturally, I said yes, and as the meeting approached, we grew closer again. We spent the night together, engaged in some conversation, but mostly were tired. She fell asleep in my arms as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The evening prior, I had prepared lasagna for her to take to work the next day. After she left, I reached out to tell her I enjoyed our time and inquired if the lasagna was good. She thanked me and mentioned that she had really enjoyed our time together, though she felt it was too short. I assisted her with practical matters and budget planning for her future here, which she greatly appreciated and found sentimental since it was unfamiliar for her to receive such help. The end of her work shift drew near, and of course, I attempted to see her again. She didn't reply until she was already home, but assured me she wanted to see me again. She was just overwhelmed and wanted to get home as quickly as possible. I wasn't entirely satisfied with having spent only one night together, and it felt like the emotional investment had largely been one-sided leading up to her visit. I communicated my desire for more consistent engagement, and she agreed. We both began to invest equally in the relationship. We texted more often, shared more details about our lives, and made more frequent video calls via FaceTime. She also enrolled in a university orientation in my town, and we began to envision a future together. This made me happy and indicated to me that she wasn't just discussing it, she was taking steps to make it a reality, or at least considering it seriously. For Christmas, I sent her flowers, which she appreciated deeply, and we exchanged much more about our daily lives, such as food pictures, family images, and past relationships. As the new year approached, we wished each other a happy new year, and for the first time, she mentioned that she was in love with me and was looking forward to a future where we could be near each other and spend more time together. After the holiday and social obligations subsided, our connection intensified significantly. I opened up about wanting to share more in-person time with her in her hometown, and she disclosed some of her deepest fears and insecurities. We supported one another. She even requested more regular calls and expressed that she missed me on several occasions, leading to heartfelt emotional exchanges. While I recognize that these actions are quite basic, it marked a significant advancement for her to open up to that extent. For the first time in our relationship, I felt emotionally secure. It felt rewarding, and we began to support each other not only emotionally but practically as well. I helped her with financial, practical, and technical matters, establishing a local bank account, visa preparations, selecting a new laptop for her studies. She frequently mentioned that my patience had incredibly aided her in opening up, and she was already in therapy to work through her issues with boundary setting and saying no to people. Additionally, she tends to avoid asking for help and represses her emotions, attempting to manage them independently. Her self-esteem is very low, and she struggles to trust herself in making the right decisions, often dwelling on simple matters. She made plans for another work assignment in February near me and requested my assistance with opening a bank account and showing her around town ahead of her university orientation. I readily accepted. Later in January, she indirectly indicated that she viewed me as her boyfriend by sending me a screenshot of a conversation she had with a former client and friend residing in my country. In this conversation, she mentioned that she planned to live in my town with her boyfriend in the future and that she wanted to pursue her master's degree here once she had enough money for the visa. She tested my reaction indirectly. I responded warmly, and it felt great. That evening, I expressed my happiness to see that she was considering this future plan, but I noticed a change. She mentioned she would respond later but never did. Instead, she took an apologetic tone about the delay but failed to reply to the actual message. It felt as though she had inadvertently ensnared herself by revealing that screenshot. She seemed somewhat distant for a while, but it didn't concern me excessively. I realized that she often communicated indirectly, and when we attempted to engage in a direct conversation about her feelings, she would shut down. As the time of our meeting and her travel neared, she began to feel anxious about it and sought more personal space. Fear crept in, and it appeared she was nearing another phase of ghosting. Despite some travel complications, we managed to meet. I picked her up, we embraced, and I took her luggage as we boarded the train home. We didn't visit the bank as planned because the train was late and it had already closed. The weather was terrible, so we opted to return to my place to relax. Time was limited as she had to leave for work around 5 p.m. that same day, and we hadn't seen each other in a while. I prepared a meal for her while she showered, and we spent the remaining time catching up on physical intimacy and conversation. It was wonderful being with her, and we both felt sad that she had to leave for work, expressing a desire for more time together. I arranged a cab for her to work, paid up front, shared a few kisses, and she was off. She quickly reached out afterward to express how much she missed me. I reciprocated and carried on with my day. Now, however, her withdrawal began to occur gradually. Because we hadn't had the opportunity to visit the bank due to the train delay, we scheduled a brief meeting between her work shifts to handle it together. Shortly before this meeting, I texted her to confirm the plans and to ask whether it was still convenient for her or if another day would be preferable. She replied that she was busy and would respond the following day. I heard nothing from her for 4 days after that. Eventually, I chose to disengage from the conversation, believing that if she wanted my help, she could reach out. She responded to my light attempts at communication, but shut down again when I inquired about how work was going and how she felt. She didn't reply for another 3 days. The second overnight meeting arrived, also linked to her university orientation. The plan was for us to sleep together, spend the morning together, and then she would attend the university. She canceled without any prior warning, and when I asked about the shift, she claimed nothing had changed. She was just tired and deflected my attempts to discuss better communication because I had taken a day off to be with her. She did not apologize, and we both fell silent for 6 days. On her last day in my town, I lamented what a shame it was that things had unfolded in this manner, so I reached out to her in an attempt to mend the situation before her departure. She only responded once she was back home, leaving no opportunity to resolve things. She didn't address the silence, discussing instead her travel difficulties and expressing her happiness to finally be home again. The unsaid heaviness of the situation became increasingly difficult for me to manage, and the fact that she continued as if nothing had transpired felt strange. I recognized that we both understood we couldn't proceed, as if nothing had occurred without confronting the issues left unspoken. Whatever her reasons for avoiding conversation, my reasons were straightforward. I no longer felt emotionally secure and didn't feel inclined to share my feelings with her after how she had treated me. In my view, a simple 30-minute call could have resolved our issues. However, when I inquired if she had time to talk, she ghosted me again for 9 days, and since then, I have not received any communication from her. The emotional turmoil has been overwhelming. I went from envisioning a future together, engaging in daily conversations and enjoyable times, to witnessing the cancellation of every agreed-upon plan, repeated ghosting, and then her vanishing as if I were something disposable. I sent her a letter addressing the obvious patterns of her ghosting, particularly before or after moments of intimacy, expressing my willingness to speak with her when she felt ready. I have not received a response, and I find myself uncertain about what steps to take in this situation aside from detaching and moving on. It feels painful. We were so close to forming a genuine relationship. I guess I was naive to think that things could improve. Thank you for reading this long post, and I apologize for the lengthy narrative. In summary, I met a woman 37 years old with a fearful avoidant attachment style last September. We developed a strong connection despite the 1,400-kilometer distance. After experiencing several cycles of deepening intimacy followed by her ghosting and withdrawing, we reached a point where we were planning a future together, university registration, moving to my town. Her latest and longest period of withdrawal, 9 days, followed our meeting in February. I sent a letter addressing the pattern, but I have not heard back. I am struggling with the emotional turmoil and uncertainty about how to proceed. What strategies have helped others navigate emotional uncertainty in on-again, off-again relationships, and what boundaries have proven effective when communication resumes? Has anyone successfully communicated with a partner who exhibits fearful avoidant patterns? What methods were effective in maintaining connection? What self-care practices have proven helpful for maintaining emotional balance amidst unpredictable relationship dynamics? For those who experience withdrawal tendencies in relationships, what communication approaches from partners have felt most supportive during those times? I would appreciate some advice on managing this uncertain phase, specifically, how much time and space is reasonable to allow before I need to prioritize my own healing? And if or when she eventually responds, what approaches could facilitate healthy closure instead of perpetuating this cycle of connection and withdrawal? Story 3. AO for considering ending my relationship due to my partner's treatment of me during conflicts. Thank you very much to anyone who is taking the time to read through this entire post. All right, this will likely need to be a bit lengthier. I am a person with high-functioning borderline personality disorder, and part of what that involves is my near-complete inability to evaluate whether my feelings are legitimate or to have certainty about my perceptions of situations. We have been seeing each other for about 9 months, but have only been officially together for 2. When I initially asked him if he was seeking a serious relationship or something more casual a month into our dating, he mentioned that he preferred not to think about such matters and that my inquiry made things somewhat awkward. He claimed he had never heard anyone discuss what they want while dating throughout his entire life, and just because this seems normal to me doesn't mean it is the same for him. Let's begin with Valentine's Day. I, 26 years old, female, had planned a delightful romantic evening, including cooking for him 34 years old, male, but ultimately decided to go to his place as I thought it would be more convenient for him. I realize I need to work on not prioritizing others' convenience over my own. That part isn't his fault. However, I expected that he would consider something we could do together to make the evening special. Instead, he messaged me saying he was too lazy to purchase groceries and asked if I could bring a pack of tortellini. I felt frustrated because I had invested significantly more in our food. While he had offered to bring his own food in the past, when I declined, there was a misunderstanding that I was okay with consistently spending more on our meals. I had hoped he would take the initiative to balance our expenses, but not communicating that effectively was my mistake. I responded via WhatsApp that we needed to discuss more equitable cost sharing, but I later deleted those messages when I recalled that he prefers not to handle these matters through text. When I arrived, I immediately sensed he was somewhat distant towards me. We sat on the couch for hours, about a meter apart, hardly speaking and barely making eye contact. I made an effort to touch him occasionally, but stopped when I noticed he wasn't reciprocating. I felt unable to bring up the financial situation because his body language was so defensive, and establishing boundaries is already challenging for me. Additionally, I was grappling with other issues that day, including a medical concern that had caused me significant weight loss. It was related to the pill, and things are stable now, which greatly distressed me. At one point, I found myself quietly crying on the couch while we seemed to be ignoring each other. He inquired if I wanted some of his tortellini. I had initially said I would eat at home, and I accepted, explaining that I couldn't eat at home because I felt so unwell. He reacted with annoyance. When I later expressed how upsetting that response was to me, he justified it by saying, "Well, the pack wasn't enough for both of us anymore, and I often react with annoyance when I have to do something," instead of offering an apology. During my next visit, I was still visibly upset, and he asked what was bothering me. I explained how everything on Valentine's Day affected me, particularly the tortellini incident, especially since I had just shared how my weight loss frightened me. He responded in a tone that felt somewhat mocking, defensive, and confused, repeating, "Okay," multiple times. He went on to explain that he was too stubborn to initiate a discussion about dividing our expenses and had been waiting for me to bring it up, somewhat stonewalling me in the meantime. This felt to me like a form of punishment for raising the issue. I had assumed he believed we were already sharing costs fairly, but he later clarified that he was primarily upset that I had brought up the topic via WhatsApp, despite knowing his dislike for it. When I asked if he realized that this behavior was immature, he admitted that he did. Still, I don't believe he feels remorseful for how he acted. I'm unsure. He eventually apologized if it seemed that way. Fast forward about a week. After our visit to the flea market, he suggested we quickly stop by the supermarket, no problem. He pointed out the bus we could take, which would arrive in 10 minutes. I mentioned that we should hurry since my shoes were hurting my feet. I currently have only one pair and was already dealing with blisters and inflammation. I reiterated my urgency in the store. He gathered several items while I picked up 2 things and mainly followed him. Just as we were leaving the supermarket, we spotted the bus pulling away. I remarked, "It would have been nice to catch it because my shoes hurt my feet." He replied, "Then you should have walked faster, perhaps." On our walk home, he expressed, "I'm hungry," to which I responded, "I'm sweating from the pill again." In my mind, it was a way to express that we were both suffering together and I had just recognized that day that I was experiencing adverse effects from the pill once more, which had made my life exceedingly difficult over the previous 2 months. He retorted, "Oh, poor baby, your problems are so much worse than mine," which was not my implication at all. I felt that if he truly understood my character, he would never presume such a thing. Once we reached his apartment, I said I wanted to go home, but he pressured me to share what was wrong. In tears, I expressed my concern about how quickly he perceives things as attacks when they are not intended as such. He asked, "Because of the joke?" in a tone that felt mocking again. He then clarified that he genuinely believed I was attacking him and was indeed offended by my comment, which he categorized as a joke. I cannot recall much of what transpired in the next few minutes, but it quickly escalated into a heated argument outside his apartment. I was astonished by the anger in his voice and how much he seemed to transform in my perception when he became upset with me. I wanted to go upstairs to gather my belongings so I wouldn't have to come back if we couldn't resolve our differences, as I felt the relationship was somewhat doomed in that moment. We had never fought in the 9 months we've been together, largely because we are both adept at ignoring issues, and I tend to shy away from confrontations and request very little. As we ascended, he remarked about how he constantly had to endure my hormonal whining. He knows how profoundly I have struggled with the side effects of the pill, and I had not whined about it recently, which makes the comment ironic, as he often tends to express his grievances whenever he has to accommodate me. For example, he frequently conveys how inconvenienced he feels when he has to walk me home at night, and even declined to escort me home past midnight on 3 occasions. Fully aware of my fears and the fact that I frequently get catcalled at night, which I conveyed during our fight. He justified his behavior by stating that I was transferring my issue of not wanting to stay over at his place onto him, partly because I snore, and he has spoken very harshly about people who snore in the past, and claimed that one time it was nearly 3 a.m., and he was simply too exhausted to take me home. Generally, he is incredibly kind and warm towards me, and the most physically affectionate partner I've had, which I appreciate. He possesses many admirable qualities, yet this argument has somewhat shattered my image of him and made me aware of my intense fear whenever I sense his body language becoming defensive. I have attempted to discuss this matter with him, but I do not feel he genuinely comprehends why his behavior is problematic. Rather, he is convinced that I am in the wrong in every respect. For instance, when I tried to revisit the bus incident as an example of inconsideration, he reacted with, "Why are you bringing up the bus issue again? I'm not going to take the blame for that too," or something like that. I have another conversation planned with him tonight, and I'm apprehensive about it escalating once more. The one thing in this world I cannot bear is to viscerally feel someone's anger or frustration directed at me. In my view, he does have some anger management issues. For example, he has broken several controllers, slaps his thighs fiercely when he loses in games, recently hit a wall and door out of frustration, and often receives warnings during the sports he plays. He excels in these activities, partly due to his competitiveness, but I also believe he has impulsive anger issues. He asserts that he does not have any problems with his temper. I am almost entirely convinced that none of his poor behavior is intentional. He is certainly not trying to hurt me. I believe he simply lacks considerable self-awareness, despite being an overall intelligent individual. However, intentionality does not lessen the impact of the outcomes for me. Story 4. I trusted him, only to realize his love was a performance. I was left questioning my reality while he continued as if nothing happened. This individual was the one who approached me and expressed a desire for us to collaborate, yet he only exerted effort when it was advantageous for him. He made decisions and acted in manners that showed a lack of respect towards me, and when I requested basic respect and boundaries, he was unwilling to compromise, dismissing my concerns while claiming he was already making significant sacrifices. This made me feel diminished and disrespected, leading me to question myself repeatedly and reevaluate my emotions. He prioritized his lifestyle and comfort over my security. I never sought control. I merely wanted self-respect and safety. I recognized that I was the one subjected to his control, as he constructed the emotional dynamics in such a way that left me feeling powerless when it came to expressing my needs. Rather than acknowledging and accepting that he could not abandon his lifestyle, he deflected responsibility onto me, labeling me the antagonist for not comprehending his situation, solely because he wished to have it all. He would say my feelings were valid, but would then shift to defend himself, offering insincere apologies and displaying anger if I did not accept them immediately. Everything he did was superficial, merely the bare minimum insufficient to alleviate my pain yet just enough to keep me ensnared. When I sought compromise and emotional depth, he perceived me as too demanding, irrational, or troublesome. He enjoyed indulging in self-destructive habits like partying, smoking, and drinking activities I was hesitant about. I thought his personality compensated for these behaviors because he possessed emotional intelligence that most men lack. He professed to be a feminist, not fitting into male groups due to toxic masculinity. However, it became evident that he was merely a performative manipulator, perpetually online, seeking distraction and validation from his own world. He inserted me into his small, cluttered universe filled with distractions, female friends, and hedonism. I was repeatedly pushed out, only to be taken back in, then pushed out again because his heart was overwhelmed with people. I became a bystander, a witness to my own love story, all because I cared deeply for him and was blinded by his superficial efforts. Why superficial? Because they served as temporary damage control. The issues kept resurfacing, creating confusion without offering me peace or genuine, lasting change. It's incredibly difficult to come to terms with what he did to me. The same man who professed to love and care for me engaged in all those actions and caused me to question my own reality. I remained oblivious to it all until I found myself alone, reflecting on everything. A few weeks have passed since our breakup. I have never experienced such a loss of confidence or motivation. If you were to ask me whether I have regrets, I would say I do regarding so many aspects. I wish I were not so devoted each time I enter a relationship, because every time it collapses, I am left to gather the shattered pieces alone while he moves on as if nothing occurred. This journey has become profoundly exhausting. I need some time to myself. The idea of being with him or any other man feels overwhelming. I long to love, to fight for love, and to not give up on love, but the reality feels incredibly painful, draining, and utterly unattainable. You follow the rules in your own mind, yet you forget that the objective was to nurture a relationship with me. So go ahead, do exactly as you please. I will be here, rebuilding myself, becoming more unreachable than ever. Summary. This is my journey through the emotional aftermath of a breakup with someone whose actions never aligned with his words.